If there's one thing about Donald Trump, he's outspoken about terrorism and the terror threat. And he hates it when Democrats don't call out the enemy by name.
We now have an administration and a former Secretary of State who refuse to say radical Islamic terrorism. Anyone who cannot name our enemy is not fit to lead our country. She won't even mention the word, and nor will President Obama. He won't use the term radical Islamic terrorism. Now, to solve a problem, you have to be able to state what the problem is, or at least say the name.
So why is it that Trump's so unwilling to talk about white nationalist terrorism, to say the name, to the point where he isn't willing to accept it's a major and growing threat, even as the bodies pile up?
You see today white nationalism as a rising threat around the world.
I don't really. I think it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems.
The truth is that Donald Trump is a terrorism denier, a white nationalist terrorism denier. Less than 2 weeks after Trump's inauguration, a white nationalist named Alexandre Bissonnette in Quebec City, Canada, shot and killed 6 Muslims as they prayed in a mosque. Bissonnette had searched Trump's name 800 times online in the month before the attack, an attack which shook Canada to its core. And President Trump's response to this horrific incident of terrorism just 100 miles from the US border? Nothing. Not one word in public. No condemnation, no tweet, nothing. 5 days later, though, Trump was quick to condemn a jihadist attack in Paris, which thankfully didn't succeed in killing anyone. Radical Islamic terrorist, Trump declaimed on Twitter. And this has basically been the pattern throughout his car crash of a presidency. He goes on and on about radical Islamic terrorism, even though 70% of the terrorist-related deaths in the US over the past decade have been at the hands of far-right extremists. Even though every single one of the 50 terrorist-related deaths on US soil last year was connected to white nationalism. But this president simply doesn't care. Remember, Trump's never said a word about the white nationalists who attacked a mosque in Minnesota. He's never said a word about the white nationalist supporters of his who plotted to attack the mosque and homes of Somali immigrants in Kansas. Then there's Charlottesville. In August 2017, as neo-Nazis marched through that city,
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
White nationalist and Trump superfan James Fields Jr. drove his car into a group of protesters, murdering Heather Heyer in the process. Trump's reaction was to first condemn many sides, and then he said something truly astonishing and disgusting.
And you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Very fine people, both sides. Something he's never said in the aftermath of an ISIS terrorist attack. Weird, that. In January, Trump was asked to comment on the white nationalist in the Coast Guard, who was arrested for plotting to kill top Democrats and high-profile liberal media figures.
I think it's a shame. Yeah, I think it's a very sad thing when a thing like that happens.
A shame? A sad thing? He's not giving his condolences on the passing of an elderly relative. He's being asked to comment on a white nationalist terrorist, one who was working for the US government, I might add. The truth is that when it comes to ISIS or MS-13, when it comes to black and brown killers, Trump is always outspoken and outraged. He refers to them as evil, scum, losers, animals. But when it comes to white nationalist terrorists, Trump's lost for words. The cat's got his tongue. There's no anger or passion or outrage on his part. None. Take Cesar Sayoc, the hardcore Trump supporter arrested for sending pipe bombs to top Democrats. What was the president's response?
I did not see my face on the van. I don't know. I heard he was a person that preferred me over others.
He preferred me over others. Take the New Zealand mosque massacres in February.
I guess if you look at what happened in New Zealand, perhaps that's a case. I don't know enough about it yet. They're just learning about the person and the people involved. But it's certainly a terrible thing, terrible thing.
I don't know enough about it. It's a terrible thing. Not a word of condemnation in that statement, though, for the white nationalist terrorist who did the terrible thing and live-streamed it. Take the most recent San Diego synagogue attack. Trump tweeted thoughts and prayers and suspect apprehended, and then moved on to tweeting about the size of the crowd at his rally. Can you imagine if the San Diego shooter had been ISIS or MS-13? He'd be talking drone strikes in Guantanamo Bay. He'd be talking bigger and better walls and more deportations. But it was a white dude who, like this president and his supporters, wanted to keep out invaders.
People hate the word invasion, but that's what it is. It's an invasion of drugs and criminals and people.
So to be clear, the President of the United States, who uses the language of white nationalist terrorism, has never given a speech denouncing such terrorism. In fact, he rarely ever condemns violence from the far right, and when he does so reluctantly, quietly, half-heartedly, and making sure to condemn
Both sides.
I guess we shouldn't really be surprised. One of the cardinal rules of politics is that you don't attack your base. And the fact is that white nationalists, including some white nationalist terrorists, are part of Trump's base. Whereas the members of ISIS and MS-13, not so much.